Tyranitar usage is rising in Gen 9 OU, folks, and if this continues, if this trend continues, Tyranitar might just return to OU status once again. They are saying the GOAT is not washed, the allegations were false, and it was just a matter of time. If you're not aware, Gen 9 has been the worst generation for Tyranitar in a long time, which is noteworthy because Tyranitar is one of the most, if not the most successful competitive Pokemon historically. It has been OU in every single generation it has existed in. And more than that, in many of those generations, it is metagame defining. You know who else is metagame defining? Future Paradox form of Sinistea, Iron Mugulus, of course. We all know this. Politically speaking, Iron Mugulus defined an era, with total control over the known world that was uncontested, of course, until he was betrayed by his own son, Cuptonio. In a tragic turn of events, many are calling the shattering of an empire, as the Mugulus regime was finally shelved for good. Will the greater populace accept leaving all of their political decisions in the hand of a single cup, or do they dream of a time when an entire council of horses instead governed over them, with a bit more nuance to their decision-making? Only by liking this video and also subscribing to the channel and hyping this video can we get a proper evaluation of the current landscape and what rivalries and rebellions might be brewing behind the scenes. Anyway, Tyranitar is of course a pseudo-legendary with an incredible base stat total, the outstanding ability Sandstream, which sets Sandstorm on the field, an absurdly vast move pool with boosting moves, utility moves, physical and special attacks, status ailments, anything you could ask for really. This is a Pokemon that has just stood the test of time. And I believe it to be the most well-designed Pokemon of all time, with a great combination of incredible advantages but also targetable weaknesses, which I think is what you should strive for when designing a Pokemon. Tyranitar has always been relevant in these formats, but it's never felt frustrating to play against in my opinion because there are these clear ways to defeat it. In fact, I think Tyranitar's presence promotes a lot of variety because of all its incredible and differing options. Now in Gen 8, Tyranitar famously took a massive hit with the loss of its key option, Pursuit, which was very important on the Pokemon. Pursuit being a dark-type attack that can trap enemies, and one of the main reasons to use Tyranitar. This led to Tyranitar falling to UU in Gen 8 for the first time in its career. However, it did rise back up over time, as people found uses for its high attack, its breaking power, and also its good combination of defense and offense, being able to switch in nicely against threats like Dragapult. Are we seeing a similar trend happening in Gen 9? Because in Gen 9, Tyranitar also fell down to UU. There are many reasons for this, including the dwindling value of Sand as an archetype in the face of the superior Sun, a poor matchup into common meta Pokemon like Great Tusk especially, and King Gambit, plus other Pokemon just outdoing its versatility and utility and providing more to teams. But that's not to say that Tyranitar has had no value in Gen 9. In fact, there are some valid reasons to use it, even though historically it hasn't been popular enough to be OU by usage. There have still been viable Tyranitar teams that prop up. This team by Vic Boss MG is one I was familiar with from last year that uses Tyranitar, of course, alongside Excadrill as a little mini win condition package. It's not an all-in Sand team or anything, like other weather teams are, but it's more of a balanced team with this Tyranitar Excadrill combination as the win condition. Excadrill, of course, has Sand Rush, granting double speed in the sand. And with Swords Dance, plus that double speed, it can clean up in endgame situations. Plus, it is a nice rapid spinner, which the team appreciates. And the Tyranitar itself is being built in an interesting way here, with heavy-duty boots to allow it to switch onto the field more often. No need for the smooth rock to enhance Sandstorm turns when you're not so all-in on sand that that's imperative, right? You have enough natural sand turns to use Excadrill when you need it. You'd rather use the boots to allow Tyrannosif here ample entry points onto the field. And one significant new option Tyranitar has received in Gen 9 is Knockoff, and this is actually a pretty massive buff. Tyranitar didn't get this move before, and this is one of the best moves in the game. Tyranitar's good at using it. It hits really hard with it, with its Dark Stab and high attack stat. In fact, it's one of the hardest hitting knockoffs in OU, which is valid and valuable. Tyranitar also gets the great combo of Knockoff and Stealth Rock, which, when you think about it, synergize with each other. Stealth Rock is an entry hazard that hits things based on their rock weakness. But the problem is, these days, most rock-weak Pokemon are running the boots. Well, Knockoff removes the boots. So, this is a natural synergy, isn't it? And Tyranitar's Vast Move Pool comes in handy, with Ice Beam as a great option to hit all of those physically bulky ground types that have terrible special defense, like Great Tusk, Garchomp, and most notably Gliscor, who is ×4 weak to Ice. And might be tempted to come in on Tyranitar and have a rude awakening as it gets frozen to death. Low Kick is another great option that deals considerable damage to King Gambit, who also might foolishly try to switch in on what they expect to be a Rock or Dark type attack and get kicked in the face. I think this was a solid team and a good approach to building Tyranitar in the modern climate that I thought felt pretty strong. I've played with this team and I like it quite a bit. I think Tyranitar actually feels pretty useful, and there's value to Sandstream for the chip damage effect, which can do nice things like removing Dragonite's multi-scale. That's valid, that's valuable. And just generally dealing little chip damage to things in a world where not everything runs leftovers anymore. That chip damage does add up, and it helps Excadrill clean up in an endgame. This is the main way I saw Tyranitar teams be built for quite a while, with this little Excadrill package and then a normal balanced core to support that. But this team style was not popular enough to push Tyranitar to OU by usage or anything. There's been a more recent trend that is responsible for Tyranitar's uptick in usage for November. And we can credit this to a player called ZavGB, who built a Tyranitar team that proved to be very solid and very popular, that used Tyranitar just by itself, without the Excadrill. In the eyes of most people, the reason you run Tyranitar is for the Excadrill synergy. But what if Tyranitar is just good on its own? And what if, with recent meta developments, the value of Tyranitar is feeling more important in fact? On its own, what does Tyranitar offer? Well, it is a good combination of bulky and offensively threatening. And with its high special defense in the Sandstorm that it itself creates, it's actually pretty nice check to a lot of common things right now. I'm sure you're all familiar that Kyurem has been rising massively in OU, and is one of the strongest Pokemon right now. So much so that it led to Scizzor's return to OU status as a good response to it. And Tyranitar is kind of similar. Tyranitar is really good into Kyurem. Even though it might be frightened by Earth Power as coverage, it's bulky enough to stomach that, and it's threatening enough to scare Kyurem out. And what's nice about Tyranitar getting a defensive entry point and forcing something out is that from there, it can click this really strong knockoff, which is just going to be a really great thing to use in any situation. You're removing an item, you're dealing a lot of damage. Tyranitar gets a lot of progress with a thing like that. Tyranitar can get similar nice entry points for this knockoff opportunity against even more common Pokemon than just Kyurem. There's Dragapult, of course. Now, Dragapult commonly carries Will-O-Wisp and U-Turn, but if you switch in against a special attacking Dragapult, you're in a great position. Do some scouting first to make sure you don't get burned, but still, that's a valid matchup to be able to switch in against and get proactive pressure from that switch in. Raging Bolt has been an incredibly popular bulky special attacker, and Tyranitar just cleanly comes in with its great special defense and threatens it very well. The same is true of Iron Moth. In fact, you have a fire resistance there, which is even better against that matchup. And that's great, because then they've expended their booster energy on Iron Moth, and you just easily force them out, making them lose a lot of value. Zapdos does not like Tyranitar. That's a tale as old as time. Tyranitar defeating Zapdos. 2025, and this is still happening. And the Sandstorm chipping Dragonite's multiscale is also an important point. This has always been relevant, because Dragonite's been popular since the beginning of Gen 9, but it's a Pokemon that's risen and risen over time, and it might be at the peak of its popularity now. So just chipping that multi-scale with Sandstorm is hugely valuable, and a really great way to make Dragonite far less scary, far less frightening. Now this set here isn't even running Stealth Rock, opting to just run more physical attacking coverage, but Tyranitar is a malleable Pokemon, of course. You could run Stealth Rock on it, utility like Thunder Wave, various different coverage options, with mixed options like Flamethrower if you want to hit the Scizor, Ice Beam if you want special ice coverage to hit Landorus and Gliscor. The fundamental thing that's really good is just sand, your bulk, your attacking power, and item removal. And this has proven to be really damn good on balanced teams like this. In fact, it's a pretty damn consistent way to get rid of boots and make progress for teams like this. Zav also realized the synergy of Tyranitar and Rillaboom. Not only is Grassy Surge granting you chip heal on your Tyranitar, allowing it to be a bit more sturdy and stick around for longer, Grassy Surge also reduces the damage of Earthquake, which is great news for Tyranitar. The ability to stomach earthquakes makes this, in particular, really good against Gliscor. You can sit in Gliscor's face and just ice punch it completely safely. This feels like history repeating itself a bit, because I think this is a similar trend to what happened in Gen 8, where Tyranitar rose back to OU for similar reasons. And to add to the similarities, there's been a rise in Choice Band Tyranitar, just using it for its big attacking power and the big knockoff click, alongside pivots and alongside the sand it's creating and everything. This is a great set. I mean, it's a choice band breaker that also checks like 5 different special threats in the format. How good is that? It feels like you're doing a lot with a little, which is what Tyranitar's always been good at. This beautiful mix of everything. People realize that choice band Tyranitar alongside Garganical is also a great combination. They complement each other well in multiple ways. Rock types obviously get extra special defense in the sand, so Garganical appreciates that. Garganical also takes on the role of utility that Tyranitar no longer needs to fulfill, because Garganical can set Stealth Rock and also switch on the ghost types that Tyranitar sometimes wants to check. This lets Tyranitar go full offense with the choice band set, and it's just a beautiful overlapping synergy, making Garganical even bulkier as well as them filling gaps in the team. It's great. Salt Cure generally also is good at making progress when sand is up for even more chip damage, plus against knocked off opponents that are switching in and taking hazard damage. It's just an incredibly natural synergy. And of course, that little Tyranitar Excadrill package is still a valid and viable way to use Tyranitar that people use. It's just that Tyranitar's usage is expanded beyond just that. People have realized it has value as a choice band wall breaker and as this general bulky attacker with a mishmash of utility and coverage that suits your team. With Tyranitar being used for multiple different purposes and fitting on different kinds of teams now, that explains the rise in usage, doesn't it? It's also worth noting that this team by ZavGB did become a sample team, meaning that players had access to the team and the ability to just copy and paste it. It was a popular team on the ladder. It's a very good team, so makes sense. But also there's just more value in Tyranitar in the current meta based on trends. There's more ways to use it that people are discovering, and it's just proving to be a more useful Pokemon. Why don't we take a look at a Tyrannosif team in action in a tournament setting? This is the recent Smogon Championship League tournament where 3D, the player called 3D, brought a Tyranitar Excadrill team. It's kind of a unique build here with Moltres, Petarant, and Rotom as the bulky pivots of choice to serve the Tyranitar and Excadrill and synergize. Let's take a look at this battle and how Tyranitar does stuff. Switching Zamazenta in on a Darkrai to stomach the Dark Pulse here and strike back with a lethal body press. Goodness. Not even a switch out or anything. In comes Volcanion to try to thwart it. Zamazenta, but in fact Volcanion takes a lot from body press too and exits the field. Here's Enamorus. And my goodness, this Zamazenta just refuses to leave. This Zamazenta refuses to leave even in the face of death against Enamorus. Wow. I think opponent's overthinking a bit and should probably just attack the guy, but that's neither here nor there. In comes the Tyrannosif. And it's already gotten a KO just by existing. The sand gets rid of Volcanion's last sliver of health. Let's go, Tyrannosif. You're doing stuff. Knocking off the Rocky Helmet. We're doing more things. No Rocky Helmet on Tinglu is a big moment. Tinglu's going to be far less threatening now. And you've gotten Stealth Rock up, which is going to be huge. That's going to be big. Ruination is admittedly doing a lot on a switch in, but you are forcing that guy out again. It looks to be Boots Enamorus, which is good to know. Boots Enamorus is non-scarfed and therefore is slower than Zamazenta. Moltres is looking like it's in a commanding position against this Goldengo, unless I'm missing something. Yeah, it's going to just make it rain for peanuts as Moltres does a massive flamethrower. Going to roost up as well. Tinglu coming in. to try to do stuff, perhaps spike up and put pressure on that way. More Ruinations. Goodness, this Zamazenta has gotten more value than I've ever seen. This is crazy, crazy work from the Zamazenta. The moral of this video is that Zamazenta is very powerful. Although, opponent did have many opportunities to nail it down. Moltres matching up well against this Enamorus here. But Enamorus with the Healing Wish, that could be huge. That could be huge. Goldengo's all the way back up to full. I mean, that's something for certain. It looks to be Scarf Goldengo, it would seem, outrunning the Moltres. And that means, can't Tyrannosif come in on that? Tyrannosif does come in and makes Sand, which chips the multi-scale of Dragonite. You see how good Sand is? You just got rid of multi-scale. That's a big moment. Wow. The bold Dragon Dance in the face of Sif, which could have Stone Edge or Ice Punch. That's a big move. Perhaps 3D is playing around Terastallization, though. The Rotom Will-O-Wisp is a more secure way to deal with the Dragonite. It does indeed half its attack, but this Dragonite's boosting up beyond what was thought possible. So maybe it can still power through. It can Petulant Stomach and Earthquake. It's not an Earthquake, it's a Roost, and it's a Hex coming down to do double damage through the burn. Does this Dragonite have the capacity to sweep this team? I mean, maybe. Honestly, it is looking to be pretty difficult to eliminate because it can just keep healing and activating multi-scale to stomach incoming hits. It's dancing and they say that it will never die, they're saying. 3D does not have an elegant move to click against this Dragonite. Hex seems to be the most damaging move it has, which is not enough. Because Roost heals more than Hex can deal. Perhaps the game plan now was to run this guy out of Roosts, but I don't know how reliable of a plan that is. How many Roosts this fella got left? 3 left. Okay, that actually is... I rescind what I just said. That's a reliable plan. That is a reliable plan. I think that the fella's out of Roosts now. 1 left. 1 Roost remaining. And now the chickens have come home to roost. Because your end is in sight, opponent. Your end is in sight, it would seem. As the chickens have returned to roost. Roar has happened, and now Dragonite... All of that build-up and all of that progress was for naught. As Dragonite, in the face of a loud noise, has exited in fear, thrown away everything it accrued in its life. Tyrannosif hits the field and clicks... What, knock off here? It clicks Ice Beam predictively to damage the Tinglu and threaten a 2-hit KO, securing the battle for good. It was already a foregone conclusion, but that Ice Beam certainly removed all hope, and in a fitting turn of events, Tyrannosif is the one that secures this battle. Just the ability to knock off an item and make some sand had a massive impact here. It denied Volcanion one more turn of clicking Steam Eruption. It denied Dragonite the multiscale, at least in the short term there, for a moment, which sort of halted that from getting too crazy. And the Ice Beam coverage proved lethal in this final position. You can see here the value of Tyranitar, and this time I don't even think Excadrill did anything. It was just Tyranitar being the useful one. Excadrill was just in the back gathering dust. It wasn't even part of the equation. It was just Sif coming in and making sand and doing what it does best. And isn't that beautiful? In the month of October, Tyranitar had 4.99% usage in OU. So if there were to be a tier change in November, Tyranitar would be OU by usage. The cutoff is 4.52%. But Smogon no longer does monthly tier changes. You need a bit more time to actually be ranked OU here, or at least now is not the time for a tier change. Do we think Tyranitar can continue this high usage and maintain its position here, returning to OU status? I honestly think there's a good chance. As I stated, there's multiple different ways to use Tyranitar, and I think that there's more to even develop with Tyranitar. We've seen, just then, a pretty unique team structure with Moltres and Petulant. There's the Rillaboom Garganical approach. You can even cut Excadrill and run pure Tyranitar balance. You can run it as a breaker. And I think it has the vast move pool to keep adapting to meta shifts. I also think that it just fits well in the current format. You want someone that can switch in on a wide array of different things and then from there output offense. We've shown how sand is really useful. Just a little bit of chip here and there, putting things into key ranges, allowing for 2-hit KOs and 1-hit KOs that were previously not possible. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, especially in a world where not everything is running leftovers anymore. I think that Tyranitar certainly has enough metagame usefulness to rise to OU and keep this usage up. I don't know though, I mean, I did say something similar back when there was a tier trend of Garchomp rising in usage, where it was briefly having enough usage to be OU, but that didn't keep up when the next tier change happened, and at present Garchomp is still UUBL, so I did miss the mark on that one a bit. Although I still think Garchomp could rise to OU in the future, but it hasn't for a while now, and my prediction of it rising on the next tier change was not correct, so I don't know, Tyranitar looks really good, these meta trends seem so favorable for it, but it might just be a fleeting trend, it might just be that team was popular for a time, that particular team, and then people will adapt to that team. Maybe Tyranitar isn't so good that it's going to continue to be used in OU on different sorts of teams, enough to justify an OU placement. We really will just have to see. These things are very difficult to predict. No one predicted Weezing Galar would rise up to OU. Nobody predicted Scizor would be back. Maybe some people did, but it's an unpredictable world. Things happen, things shift. Tides change in ways that we can scarcely imagine. Will Floret rise to OU status? Who knows? Who knows? What I do know is that Tyranitar is, in my opinion, the greatest Pokemon ever designed, and I do love seeing it persevere even in the face of power creep rising around it, and it being nerfed directly at Gen 8. I think that it rising back up to OU in Gen 8 was such a good story. If it happens again in Gen 9, I feel as if, is there any denying that this is the GOAT of Pokemon? There's no denying it if so. If Tyranitar rises to OU, there is no question who is the greatest Pokemon of all time. There's no question. Tyrannisif is considered a treasure of the nation of France. The most powerful French Pokemon ever created. And a cultural touchstone as well. A beacon of hope in times of turmoil. Scholars around the globe also consider him the smartest Pokemon to ever exist, which I believe is very true. Thank you to the fellows on the Smogon Discord for helping me find examples of teams and replays where Tyranitar was showing off what it could do in a modern context in the current Gen 9 OU metagame. What do you think of Tyranitar's rise? Just a trend? Just a fleeting trend that will fade away like dust in the wind, or a sign that the GOAT might be returning to his former glory? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.